So I have tried to keep a very level head when it comes to Hogwarts Legacy. For one, because I'm really excited for the game, because I really like Harry Potter stuff. I mean, I have the Harry Potter Lego Hogwarts Castle in the background of all of these videos. I like Harry Potter. I'm not ashamed to admit it. However, as is always the case when you're excited for something, it's easy to start to get blinders on and to miss the obvious cues that could have clued you into the game being less than stellar, maybe having some problems, maybe you should not get your hopes up too high. And so I try very hard to be the level-headed voice that says, maybe we should calm down, we're getting really excited. And that's why I put out videos like the one I did recently, where I went through and I gave a skeptical look at Hogwarts Legacy. And since putting that out at this time of recording roughly 2 weeks ago, almost 500,000 people have seen that video, including many Hogwarts Legacy fans who are extremely excited for this game. And let's just say my somewhat skeptical look at the game was a bit of a shell shock to a lot of people. Some people said that I was overly aggressive. Some people said I was too negative and didn't mention enough positive things. And I take all of this stuff pretty seriously, and I want to be corrected when I'm wrong and be as right as possible. So I reached out to one of the biggest Hogwarts Legacy creators who makes some amazing content on the game, has been following it very closely, and I asked for him to come on a Discord call and explain to me where I might be wrong, and I decided to push back a little bit on him and let him try to see where I was coming from. And at the end of it, I think we came out to a really amicable conclusion, and I'm really excited for you guys to see how this went. But before we get into all of the good stuff, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Factor. Factor is the no prep, no mess meal provider that saves time and alleviates stress. Every week, they will send you chef prepared meals to take the guesswork out of eating well, so that you never have to opt for something that isn't good for you and something that doesn't taste like a chef made meal. Seriously, these things are delicious. And as you guys know, I don't recommend stuff unless I actually use it myself. And Factor is one such service that I use myself like 6 days a week. Actually, whenever I'm live streaming, you guys know that I actually am eating a Factor meal every time. I have these things for breakfast. It's a fantastic way to start the day. And a lot of the time I have it for lunch too, because I stream right through lunchtime as well. They're super easy to reheat. They're never frozen, and they are freaking delicious. Seriously, Factor is amazing because it gives me the chance to eat healthy, nutritious foods that fit within my current diet plan, because I'm trying to get rid of that dad bod. And the meals are delicious, easy to reheat, and then there's no mess when you're done with it. It's just like across the board amazing. I love it dearly. I can't recommend them enough. Check them out at the link in the description box below or in the pinned comment, and make sure to use my promo code POGLUKEJAN60 for 60% off of your first box. Again, check them out at the link in the description box below or the pinned comment. I can't recommend them enough, and who knows, if you get the chef's selection and recommended menu, you can even eat the same meal as I do every time that we're streaming, because I am always eating when we start streams. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but I mean, come on. Once you taste Factor, you'll know why. They're delicious. So without further ado, check out our conversation we had together. All right, I am here with the one and the only Retro. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Excited to talk Hogwarts Legacy. It's like you had a video or something that, I don't know, got some people talking.
Yeah. A lot of people talking. Well, I'm glad you agreed to do this, because basically the goal of this is to talk with somebody who knows Hogwarts Legacy better than 99.999% of the population who's interested in this stuff, definitely better than me. And I always want to have as accurate a position as possible. And so that's what we're here to do. We're going to talk about like where we both stand on the game. We're going to talk about like some misconceptions, concerns I have that maybe you can quell. And, you know, maybe if you say something that I find really interesting, we'll poke and prod that a little bit. But we aim to be very conversational and tackle this in a way that hopefully is enlightening for everybody, and address some of the concerns people had after my video, and come out the other side happier, healthier, and hopefully more excited than ever, because hopefully you can calm me down and get me more settled on a lot of this stuff. But real quick, I mean, give everybody an introduction to your channel, what you do, in case they haven't heard of you, and let them know what's up.
Yeah, sure. So it's Retro Raconteur. I always kind of use the tagline, I'm just a dad who loves games and the stories they tell. I used to say it at the beginning of every YouTube video, which, as you probably know from studying YouTube, it's like, cut the intros, cut the intros. You can see the drop off when people just skip ahead.
People just skip.
But
Yep.
then people come back. Yeah, yeah. And they say, I miss your old intro. So, yeah, man, I've been gaming for years and really started doing the YouTube stuff when, that whole thing in 2020 happened, which YouTube doesn't like us saying too much. But yeah, the 2020 thing had a lot of extra time on my hands. So we were chatting a bit before we started recording here, and my son and I just played a ton of Animal Crossing. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go in on this YouTube thing. I tried Twitch and you know how it is when you start on Twitch. Anybody who's tried content creation, it's like, I've got two people watching. One of them's me, the other's the bot.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. Focused on really just like, let's make some good content that people are interested in. And then this little Hogwarts Legacy game comes around, and I've been a Harry Potter fan since, I read the books long before they became super popular. I'll never forget, I had a Scholastic book order, and literally just like seeing the cover and reading the little description, I was like, that sounds interesting. And I don't even think the second and third books were out yet. So this was really early. And so I got the book, read it, and of course the rest is history. So been waiting for a game like this for a long time. When they say some of us have been waiting 20 years for a game like this, we really have. The old games have a charm to them, but never have they attempted something like what they're doing here.
Yeah, you're not kidding. For a lot of people, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it literally is a dream come true. To be able to explore Hogwarts and walk the hallways that people walked in the movies and in the books and things. So it is something people have been very, very excited for from the moment it was announced. And obviously there's a lot of pressure. There's a ton of hype, as I'm sure you are all too aware of.
Right.
And my video was kind of built to try and talk people off the cliff, because I've seen that there is, let's just say, the potential for a lot of people to get sort of overhyped on this stuff. And when people get overhyped, there's the potential for them to be horribly disappointed, because like, if you think the game's going to be a 12 and then the game comes out and it's a solid 7.5, that 7.5 is still worth playing, I would say.
Right.
But that's going to come off.
Fan.
Yeah, it's going to come off as like really disappointing and upsetting, because you thought it was going to be this amazing, groundbreaking thing, and it just turns out it's good. It's not amazing, but it's good. So I try to like talk people off the cliff with these skeptical look videos, to just be like, listen, not everything is perfect. There are some things that I think are cause for, okay, maybe, okay. Like, I'm excited, but okay, like this could go one of two ways. And I think that the video for a lot of people came off as more of like a hit piece, more of just like a Debbie Downer takedown. And of course, that's not what I intended it to be. But I figured that we would talk about some of those points. I want to get your thoughts on it, discuss some of the misconceptions, and for us to settle each of these things kind of one at a time. If I'm describing my stance on the game as it stands, I'd say I'm really excited. I am aware of like an iffy history from the studio, the fact that it's being published by Warner Brothers, and they have already shown some really weird decisions when it comes to monetization and the collector's edition, and basically how they perceive value in selling to the player. And those things make me a little bit, maybe not like suspicious, but at the very least it gets me paying a little closer attention. But all told, I'm very excited. Like, if 10 is I'm going crazy, I'm crazy excited, minus 10 is I hate this and I'm going to be a troll about it, I'm like a solid 6 or 7. I'm really excited for the game, but I try very hard not to become hyped for something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How would you describe your current stance towards the game as somebody who makes content for this like all the time?
Yeah, been following it for so long. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll just say I didn't take it as a hit piece at all. If you watch all the way through your video, you even say like, I hope this comes off as me. This is coming from a good place. And as you point out, you literally have the castle in the background. So it's not like you're just somebody jumping on this hype train, or I guess whatever you'd call a reverse hype there to tear it down. But yeah, as someone who I guess you had loosely followed it a little bit, now you're kind of revisiting, jumping back in, like, okay, what's going on here? Because clearly, you're right, there is a ton of hype. So, I mean, I'm probably at a 9 right now, if I'm being honest, for the hype meter. And it really, my skepticism was very early on. So they first announced this. I'm Red Dead, like top tier devs who have been doing this type of, I mean, they've been working decades to build up to those masterpieces, which is what most of those games are, right? Elden Ring, is another one that gets often brought up. So it's like, okay, let's, as you point out in your video, let's look at the studio and look at their history, which it's not a bad history, but it's a history of making games that are not in this realm, which even, they would say this is a big step for them, a very big step for them. So when I really started to get a lot more hyped in the game was when they showed off, it was the PlayStation State of Play. So they had a dedicated state of play. I think it was, I wrote it down here before we got started. March of 2022. So just last year. It's crazy. March 2022. And that state of play just like blew me away. Like I did not expect it to go in the areas they took it to. So many other things they showed, things that we didn't expect to be in there. And then some things that we were hoping for that aren't. We'll get to some of those. But it was just like, okay, now I'm starting to get an idea of what they're going for, the ambition. And then you start that hype starts to build up a little bit. And, just to condense all the other stuff very quickly, because they've had so many, they've done gameplay showcases. They've had trailers at they were at the Brazilian Comic-Con. They've done all these little things along the way. And every single time I see something else, it's just like, I can't believe they're attempting something like this. And yeah, there's been some rough edges. Like there was one thing they showed where the voice looked kind of off and sort of the motion capture was weird. I think the combat looks great. What I've been saying is like, obviously none of us know how it will play yet. We haven't had it in our hands, which is such a huge part of the game, right? That feel, how things feel as you're playing through it. I'm almost totally confident the exploration, the Easter eggs, the lore, like the attention to detail, all of those things, I have no doubt they're going to knock out of the park. Just seeing how passionate they are about this, the devs that are working on it. The other stuff, I'm right there with you in terms of the skepticism, just because we don't know. I mean, we just got news today. Officially, they said that they finally released the final PC specs for the game. They also talked about there's going to be a 60 FPS targeted performance mode for consoles for the current gen anyway, 30 FPS fidelity modes. It's like, okay, well, that's a good sign that they have these performance modes, but how's it all going to run? So that's kind of where I'm at and sort of my history of everything. But like on the dev side, like every time they've shown something else, it's just like they get it. They for sure get it, and they've been just so plugged into the community. It's really been nice to see.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree that the transparency they've had is extremely comforting, because in like pretty much every major case that we could point to games that launched totally broken and disastrous, there was a lot of secrecy involved with it. They were very locked down. When I saw like Cyberpunk 2077 behind closed doors at E3 in 2019, like you would have thought the president was in that room. They had security guards mounted around. They made sure you weren't filming. They had like 2 guys standing on either side watching you as you watched this thing happen to make sure you didn't like take out your phone and sneakily start filming it. Like it was crazy. And, it didn't look that great back then. And as we got closer to the game's launch, they started doing weird stuff where like reviewers weren't allowed to show off their own recorded gameplay. They certainly didn't do like 20-minute gameplay demos where they showed the game just running and you exploring the map. Because if they did, you'd see that it was broken. So the fact that they've been so transparent for me is very, very comforting. As for, the history of the studio, I think that is important to touch on. And,
sure.
When we're talking, like you mentioned earlier, about a game that is allegedly huge, where you can explore all of Hogwarts Castle, the surrounding lands, do all of this stuff with an epic story tied in, and needing to be consistent with the lore and the expectations contained therein, this is a big deal and this is a big game.
Yeah.
And the last game that these guys worked on was Cars 3 Driven to Win. Before that, they did Disney Infinity 3, 3.0. Then they did 2.0 in 2014. In 2013, they had the original Disney Infinity. They've been owned by Disney. They were booted by Warner Brothers. Basically, they've never played in the major leagues. And now they're being thrust into just about as major league as you could possibly get in the gaming space. Like, this is, by all accounts, possibly going to be the best selling game of this year. And it's not going against like non-existent competition. There's some serious competition this year. And so there's a lot of pressure. And I think they know that too, which is why they've been so transparent. But I think it's important to just remember that like these are human beings, and like video games aren't magic. So even though they are a very talented group of folks and they're very passionate about this, there are still some limitations to the game, which I think is important to acknowledge. And I don't think that makes us like negative Nancy's for bringing up, you know.
Yeah. And this, I mean, the Hogwarts Legacy diehard fans may get upset with me if I say, but I mean, I don't even think it's fair to compare it to games like Red Dead and Elden Ring. Like, if it is as great as those games, then that will be a monumental accomplishment, right, for that studio, and they will be on the map for sure, right, if they can deliver that quality of an experience. But yeah, I mean, just, you're right, like the passion can only take you so far, and it's a big step up, which I don't even think they would deny, right? I mean, it's just, and it sounds like from everything they've talked about that this is sort of the game that they have been wanting to make for so many of them there, that they have been wanting to make. But yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? We'll see. Not much longer to go now.
Yeah, for real. It's getting, we're getting close.
Very close.
Yeah, and I think with so much of this, you know, it's when we talk about the hype meter, what we're trying to do, like when somebody said in the comment section, or I think it was a tweet, they said, well, what's the point? Like, let me be really excited for this. Stop bringing me down. I like the process of being hyped. So let me be hyped. And here's the thing, like, I totally understand that being hyped is super fun. And I'm not going to fault anybody for being really excited for something. But the reason why I mentioned in the video that I feel like content creators like us have a fiduciary duty, or to use something similar, like a trust-based relationship and duty to our audiences, is because if we say, this is great, go buy it, and then it ends up not being great, but you still bought it, we bear some responsibility in you wasting your money, or at least spending more money than you should if it's a game that's worth like $40, but I encouraged you to buy it at 70. And in tough times like these, which are only getting tougher this year, I take that very seriously. And so I want to make sure that I'm not just hyping something up for the sake of easy views or because I like the rush of it, but, you know, because I take this fairly seriously. And I know you take it seriously as well. And it's sort of a balancing act. And I'm sure you've seen that.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I thought about doing kind of a response video to yours, and I do like a weekly live stream, I thought, you know what, let's get the chat involved with this. Let's do a live. And I have to say, I didn't know how many people were going to be making responses to your video. I don't guess you knew that either until it happened. But yeah, we just had a really good conversation on stream about this idea of hype. And I really appreciated you saying that in your video about how, as someone who's sort of more of a new content creator, you know, I've been doing it for years, but I still feel like I'm new, right? Just hearing that reminder of, yeah, I mean, obviously you want to be upfront and honest with people. And I'm definitely on that side of like, I love getting hyped about stuff. Like, it doesn't bother me if it comes out and it was terrible. Would I be disappointed? Absolutely. But I'd move on to the next thing, you know, pretty quick. I use the example on my live stream of Lost, right? Like, Lost was a show. Dude, I don't regret. Lost.
Oh God.
Yeah, I don't regret all the message boards and the podcasts. I don't regret all the hype. I mean, Game of Thrones kind of in the same boat where they did a great job and then sort of dropped the ball at the end. I just, yeah, I love the hype, but I also totally get people who say like, I was burned by Cyberpunk. I refuse to let my hype meter get too high for this. Now, if you're talking about like my favorite NFL team, I'm right there with you. I set my bar really low. It's like and then if they do well, it's like, oh, great, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm in
But
Colorado. We've got the Broncos, so of course the bar is about as low as it could possibly be. Yeah, no, it's something that I think it's kind of like I said at the end of my video. You know, it comes from a good place. I know it can sound like we're just being negative, bringing this stuff up, but it comes from a good place because, again, at the end of the day, I'm still super excited for this game, and I bring these things up to bring myself from like the 9 or the 10, where I'm like, I can't wait, and it brings me down a little bit to like, okay, I'm excited. Yeah, where I can maintain my faculties a little bit. So I think that's important just to stress. And I gotta say, like, the Hogwarts Legacy community, I've been blown away at how not just like also like mature, but also kind and accepting. Like, I've been blown away. Normally, you know, if I come out and I say Sonic Frontiers sucks, like I'll have people at my door knocking down and with like pitchforks and stuff. But I put this video out on Hogwarts Legacy, and people are like, I think that's a very valid thing to say. And while I'm still excited, I think that it's important. Like, I was blown away. I've never had that before in a video like this. What's going on here? Yeah, it was great. It's really, really great.
Surprised if that's a bit of a carryover from the Harry Potter fandom. I know you're a fan too. I don't know how were you like the whole midnight book release? When did you sort of come on board as a Potter fan?
Fun fact, I was raised in a household where like, not to get political or religious, but basically I was raised in a household where Harry Potter was seen as demonic and satanic.
Gotcha.
So for my childhood, we were not allowed to read it or talk about it. We saw the movie trailers come up on TV, and my parents would be like, turn that garbage off. And so, like,
oh, wow.
I was always curious. But then once I got to like high school and I could start sneaking, movies myself, or like college when I can just do whatever I want, then I started to check it out, and I was blown away. I was actually kind of bitter that I didn't get to experience it as a kid. So I'm a late riser. I came into it late. So I was not involved in like the book releases or anything as much as I would have liked to have been.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I grew up in a religious home too. Fortunately, my mom, she's like, what is this? And so she finally read it herself and she loved it. So then she was totally cool with it. But as far as like the midnight releases and everything goes, the fandom that developed, I mean, the first podcast I ever listened to was a Harry Potter podcast. They were Mugglecast and Pottercast. I mean, they were, in my mind, they were huge. I have no idea how they could have had 100 listeners. I have no idea, but they were two of the big fan sites. And it just very quickly, this community grew. These online message boards, before message boards were even super popular. I mean, it just hit at the perfect time, right? That's when the internet was just taking off, when the books started to release. Then they got the movie deal and everything. But it has long been a community that is just so, I mean, all my experiences have been so great. I actually went to a live recording of one of those podcasts I mentioned. They did, in the lead up to book 7, it was Pottercast, did a Summer of 7 tour. And they actually came to a bookstore near me, and I went, and it's just like the diversity of the people in the room, like young to old. You've got teenagers in there excited about it. People of different races and all different backgrounds, and it really brought a lot of people together. Mm-hmm. And I think that has carried over. And as you alluded to, I'm glad to hear that you've had a good experience and people not going crazy attacking you, because I did take it as coming from a good place. And I've been on with a couple of the YouTubers who have been covering Hogwarts Legacy a lot, and I mean, they're just great people, fun to talk to and hyped about the game, obviously, but I'm glad they're able to understand your critiques coming from a good place.
Yeah. And it's, while I miss, and I'm kind of bummed that I didn't get to experience it when it was at the peak of its hype. The only Harry Potter related stuff that I've gotten to witness firsthand is like Fantastic Beasts, which, for me it was kind of like, but it's maybe we'll get something else one day. I don't know about now, but it really is a franchise that's transcended not just its creator, but it's transcended like in many ways the original cast, the films. It's timeless in a lot of ways, and it just serves kind of like Star Wars. It's just a great franchise and a universe to bring people together over this weird cast of characters, and the universe itself is a character. And that brings me to one of the things that I think is most interesting about Hogwarts Legacy, which is the titular location, Hogwarts. For so many people, I've seen so many people say, even if the game sucks, I'll still buy it because I'll finally get to explore Hogwarts. And I think that's a really interesting thing to say. Like, when else have you seen that in a game where, like Grand Theft Auto, oh, well, if it's set in Miami in the 80s, I don't care if the game sucks. I just want to drive around Miami.
Just walk around.
You'll never hear that about another game, except maybe Red Dead. But like even that, you very rarely hear that, only for very select games. But in this case, it's just the chance to explore this place that's been very faithfully recreated, including locations that were only described in the books that we've never seen because they weren't even in the films. So like that alone is enough for people to be excited for it and to want it. And I find that fascinating. I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating.
No, I've said on stream before that I'm confident I would enjoy this game if it was literally if they just turned it into a walking simulator of Hogwarts, which if they just nailed that part, I would at least enjoy that, hopefully there's a great game with it. But yeah, just that exploration, which I kind of alluded to earlier, as I'm fairly confident they're going to nail that. And the developers, when they've been on these various showcases and the details that they have noted from lore that they're pulling in, you can just tell they poured over every single material that they had, right? From the books to the films. And I think it comes through and you make a great point too about the Boston Madsen, she works for Avalanche. She talked about how she even said, go back and reread the books after you play the game. It's going to make you want to go back and read the books because it's going to give you like a new sense of physical space of like exploring Hogwarts. Like it's one thing to read about it and know, okay, that the hospital wing is down that corridor, right? And the Gryffindor entrance is here. But then when you can actually walk through and chart the path yourself, that's going to give you sort of a new experience when you go back and read those books. Because me personally in real life, like I'm terrible with directions. Like I can't place where, thankfully my wife is much better at that. But hopefully like having this replica of Hogwarts created digitally in this game will just give people a whole new experience. I don't know if you've ever dabbled or seen any of the Minecraft stuff that people have done with Hogwarts, but there's some insane recreations from fans of Hogwarts, and that's with the limitations of Minecraft. But now seeing a game like this where they seem to just be focusing on every little detail, the common rooms in particular. I don't know if you've watched through those videos where they just reveal the common rooms. I mean, I had breakdowns where I was going through an insane number of details that they just hid away in there that Harry in the books, he doesn't go to all of them. He doesn't see the Hufflepuff common room in the books. So they've explored that a little bit in some of the other games. So people jump on me if I say it's our first time seeing the Hufflepuff common room. We've seen it a little bit before. But yeah, so I think that's why it's so great that I'm glad you decided to do a video like this where we can really get into those kind of details, because maybe that didn't come across in your video of like, and you did say like the faithful recreation of Hogwarts, but there's so many things that look like, fingers crossed that they're doing right. And Hogwarts obviously is at the top of the list, which funny enough, before we knew a lot about the game, I wondered, are we even going to go outside Hogwarts? I mean, maybe they do Hogwarts and like Hogsmeade and it's just sort of like a very limited path. And then of course they revealed this whole sort of overworld on the outside, which we've kind of pieced together maps to try and figure out how big it is, but it seems to be like it's going to be a fairly large area too. So the fact that they said, no, it's not even just going to stay in Hogwarts, we're going to go bigger. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, and it's speaking of like the sheer scope of what they've described, it's obviously pretty crazy, but at the same time, for me as somebody who like reviews and critiques games very regularly, one of the most positive things that I think people actually see as a negative is the fact that they've pretty heavily limited their scope. Even though they've said that they're doing this recreation of Hogwarts and then the Hogsmeade, of course, and then the outer areas, they're still not ashamed to come out and say, listen, we're doing this stuff, but we're not going to do Quidditch, which is something a lot of people have addressed. We're not going to have all these little bitty games that, are described in the books, the films, and by some of the characters, even in side quests. We're going to mention them, but we don't have them working in the game. That gets a lot of people like, oh, they're cutting it out and they're lazy, blah, blah, blah. But no. What it represents is, for one, and chief among them, it's an acknowledgement of limitations. Todd Howard, famously the guy who is responsible for Skyrim, for Fallout 4, for upcoming Starfield, one of the most prolific video game designers in modern history, he is famously quoted as saying, we as a studio can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so it's important to just acknowledge what you want, what the priorities are, tackle those, and then maybe do the other stuff in a sequel or a DLC expansion, whatever else. But you got to focus on what you can do first and foremost. So for me, I see that stuff as a net positive. The fact it doesn't have Quidditch, though a lot of people I think might look at that as a negative.
I'm with you too. I posted the video. I had talked to a few people behind the scenes and kind of knew beforehand Quidditch wasn't going to be happening. And so I was prepared for the backlash that would come from fans. And of course they eventually confirmed, it's not in. But I'm right there with you. There are some fans, just so I speak to them, because I know there are fans out there very passionate about Quidditch. I'm of the mind that if this game does well, a lot of people say maybe DLC, but they made a Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup game that was its own standalone game, which was actually fairly well received. And I'm just like, with modern technology, if people really wanted a Quidditch game, maybe that's something another studio would, or, if Avalanche wants to go that route, I don't know that they would. They seem very interested in like the story component, being able to build their own kind of story within this. They did it far back enough to where they've got some freedom. It's not like you're going to be running into, Harry, Ron, Hermione, even Dumbledore is going to be very young in this game, which there's been some back and forth on when it exactly takes place. There's a little newspaper in the trailer that says 1890, and yet we've already seen several things they have changed from that trailer. Like, this character in that first trailer, that's the one that puts the sorting hat on the main character. Well, in this new trailer, it's a different character. And they're wearing something different. So depending on exactly when it takes place, Dumbledore could potentially be a student at Hogwarts that first year. But I'm getting off track here. But it's
no, it's fascinating.
You start to dive in deep. I know, like I said, I know people are excited about Quidditch, and then like Wizard's Chess, the other Gobstones, the mini games you were alluding to. I think because they were featured in the older Harry Potter games. Not particularly in a great way, but they were there, so people kind of just expect, they did it before, why can't they do it now? It's 2023, come on. And then they show us something like this most recent showcase. They showed us the Room of Requirement. So for fans who don't remember or don't follow it very closely, the Room of Requirement is like the room in Hogwarts that becomes what you need. So we obviously wanted that in the game. There are so many ways they could have interpreted that. And yet they have it as like this. It's basically like your base where you can brew potions. You can, it's like Animal Crossing. They're the Sims or something. You're decorating, you're changing the carpet, you're changing the ceiling. And then you have this other area where you can rescue these magical creatures. So it's like all those other little things. I see that as them identifying, let's do this thing really well. Maybe we're going to have to cut Quidditch. But if who knows what they keep saying that they're just scratching the surface, that there's, I think, tip of the iceberg is the phrase they keep using, which, again, one of those things that blows me away. It's like, how much more do you guys have packed in here?
Yeah.
Because that whole Room of Requirement area, the fact that you're in a magical world, right? You can do so much with a room like that. So it's been a fascinating just interpretation of that space, which I don't see as like a replacement for Quidditch, but getting back to your point there of like, let's narrow our scope to this is what we want it to be.
Right.
And I think that's what they've done with those types of spaces.
Yeah. No, and I think that other things that maybe players expected, some players were hoping for, some players were hoping that these things wouldn't be, or would be things like, multiplayer. Some people just,
Yeah, that was a big one.
demanded it. Other people are like, God, it better not be a mobile game or a multiplayer game. And so it's very split. But I mean, just to address the common misconceptions and the things that we've both seen, it's not a multiplayer game. It's not an MMO.
An MMO.
People who were worried about that stuff, that's not what this game is. It is a single player game. I don't know why. I also, for some reason, when it was announced, just assumed it was a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're going to go to class with your friends and stuff. And like, okay, that could be cool. But no, it's a single player game meant for one player, and that's it. And who knows? I mean, you were alluding to the potential of a separate Quidditch game. It might already be in the works. There's a couple of studios within Warner Brothers that we don't know what they're working on. And it could be a multiplayer Quidditch game that they come out with. And, step aside, Fortnite, there's a new multiplayer king in town. Like, you never know. I mean, it could honestly happen.
Free to play. Oh, man. All the skins and the brooms.
Yeah. Dude, they make so much money on that. They would make so much money. Like, dear God almighty.
Oh, man.
It's easy money at that point. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Get this together. And I mean, speaking of making tons of money on something quite easily, I think it's important to quickly address something I brought up in my video initially, which is the monetization practices tied up in this whole thing. Basically, I pointed out that they took the Dark Arts Arena and stripped that out of the game, and now it's an exclusive perk of having the deluxe edition. Basically, effectively, it's a $10 item that you get access to if you upgrade your version of the game, and it's been said it will be available to those who didn't buy that version of the game separately, basically as an add-on or a DLC. I would imagine for $10 as well on the side. When I said that in the video, I wasn't implying that they were going to have tons of microtransactions. I've seen a lot of people respond to this statement in that video and be like, oh no, the FAQ says no microtransactions. I get that. I understand that. And I knew that at the time of the video as well. But what I was trying to communicate was that Warner Brothers has a history of being really aggressive with how they price stuff, stripping stuff out of the game to sell it back to you later and all that crap. And this is another example of them doing just that. And while it might not have a major effect on the final game or the quality, because it's one of 3 total arenas that we know about right now, so even though some players won't get to experience it, maybe it's not that big of a deal and the game can still be amazing without it. And I would agree with that. Though my frustration is that it creates 2 tiers of players, right? Like those who can afford the extra, or in this case, full version of the game, and those who can't afford that. And I know it's something that's easy for us to talk about, who might be a little bit more like financially stable. But I remember just a few short years ago being so broke that my checking account was in the negative, like hundreds of dollars for weeks on end. I was maxing out my little like college credit card just to be able to finish paying rent for that month until I got my check from my janitorial job to be able to pay the bills. Like, I remember what it was like to be on that thin of a razor's edge. And video games are supposed to be the escape. Like, it's supposed to be the thing that unites us and allows us to forget about the problems of the real world. And it just sucks to have basically 2 tiers of gamers, those who can afford the full experience and those who can't. And I think that sucks. I think it sucks when Call of Duty does it. I think it sucks when Warner Brothers does it. I think it sucks when Sony does it. I just don't like this kind of thing. I'll call out Ubisoft when they do it. We have to be consistent across the board. And in this case, I just think it's a bummer. But I don't know. What do you think about all of this monetization tied up in the Dark Arts Arena and the collector's edition monetization? Like, what are your thoughts on how they've priced all of this stuff? And do you think it affects the game? And then we'll go back to talking about what we were.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, you make some good points, right? I mean, this has been an issue really since DLC first started becoming a thing. What is that balance? Because there is a balance. I mean, some games do it incredibly well. Like you have The Witcher, which just put a ton of content in the base game, and then they come out with some just incredible DLCs as well. I mean, I think that would be sort of an ideal example of how they would do it. Now, just for like full transparency with the Hogwarts one, that is something they had been forthcoming about from the very beginning. I mean, it doesn't just include the Dark Arts Arena as well. There's a couple of other things. There's 72 hours early access, which that's kind of a whole other conversation, right? But then there's also some cosmetics that it includes as well. So it's not just strictly the arena, but as you point out, there are also 2 other arenas as well. So for a long time, we didn't even really know what exactly is this arena thing, right? Like, is it significant? So they showed off the Dark Arts Arena in the most recent gameplay showcase, and that gave us kind of our best look at what that's going to be. What we still don't know is how the other 2 compare, right? So this is the one featuring Avada Kedavra, Crucio, Imperio, the 3 spells that people have been asking about for so long. And again, full transparency, those spells are available in the base game. It's not like you can only use them in that arena, but that arena is kind of a place where you can just go crazy with them, it seems like, and really have no consequences, whereas maybe in the main game, we still don't really know that yet either, how that's going to work when you do use them. You know, what are the consequences? So I agree. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate that there's kind of that splitting of the player base, and further splitting of that, you know, just so we're getting it all out there, right? There's also the PlayStation exclusive issue, which I know you touched on in your original video as well. And that is one that I don't know if there was a miscommunication with PlayStation when that first came out. That was a little rough, the announcement of that. So they had their pre-order date when everything was sort of going live. And the way that people started finding out about that one is through the PlayStation Store. It said something about like exclusive mission, and no, we hadn't heard anything about it. So I don't know if maybe PlayStation jumped the gun on that one. Now, of course, Avalanche has, you know, been forthcoming and they've explained everything. It's on the website. You can see the breakdown. But again, that's another kind of splitting of the player base, and it's one of those timed exclusivity things. Just one of those industry things, right? That it's hard to really, on the player side, it's hard to justify. Obviously, as you touched on, hopefully it's not going to impact the overall quality of the game for these people. And it is just $10 more in the case of the Dark Arts pack. But like you said, man, I mean, especially the times we're in right now, money is hard to come by. And I do like that they gave people the option, you know, of you can just purchase the base game. And if you decide later on, hey, I actually do think that looks worth my time and money, and maybe you want to save, wait till later, you do have that option to go back in and add it. So I at least think it's good from that perspective. But overall, I mean, it's hard to disagree with, on the player side of things, it's not really a, you know, move that you're just going to be all excited about, right?
So I'm not too worried about the Quidditch thing. Like, I think we are getting Quidditch. And like I mentioned at the top of all of this, this game is already the top seller on Steam. Pre-order wise, it's already leading the pre-order charts on every platform. Like, this game is probably...
How normal is that? You follow that sort of thing, and you cover a lot more games than I do. Is that like totally out of the norm? Because it seems like people are like, "What? Really?"
Yeah, for this far in advance, usually you will see, like, I believe The Last of Us Part 2 started to top the charts right about a week before, in terms of pre-orders and stuff. But it's not common. I mean, a full month ahead, the last thing that was probably anywhere close to this was like Red Dead Redemption 2.
Wow.
You know, so they're playing in the league of the giga, like, not even AAA games, quadruple A games. Like, this is a big deal. So you better believe every Warner Brothers executive is sitting in their like leather chair. That thing's doing really well. And they're going to double down on it. We know Universal and Warner Brothers, they're doubling down on Harry Potter expansions and stuff in the theme park divisions of their business. They're doubling down on this, trying to come up with a way to do the films. There were recent talks earlier in 2022 of potentially a Harry Potter reboot of the franchise, which I think is a terrible idea. But, you know, we'll see. Cross that bridge when we come to it. You know, they're putting a lot of eggs in this Harry Potter basket because it makes tons of money and people love it. And if the game is received well and sells stupidly well, which it already is,
seems to be,
they will write a blank check. So I'm not worried about Quidditch at all. But I
Real
mean,
quick, what do you think about? I think the reason that they set it in year 5, which is not that's unusual, right? Like you would start Hogwarts as a first year. We don't know the story reason behind it yet, but my first thought was, oh, if this does well, it's set up perfectly for a trilogy. You go year 5, 6, 7. They have a trilogy of games ready where they can still keep it within Hogwarts and not have to worry about having you go into your wizarding career or whatever, which would be an awesome game too, right? But I thought as soon as I heard year 5, I was like, ooh. Some people still think it's going to be multiple years, which they haven't confirmed. It's only 1 year. I don't see any way that it goes beyond one school year. But I just thought that's set up so well if they want to do sequels in with that same world and engine and all that.
Oh yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, the difficulty with as far as video game development is concerned, it's what I would call the Spider-Man problem. It's when you have a game set in a very unique place that you recreate for the first game, often the sequel set in the same place can start to feel kind of boring, not because it's lacking quality, but simply because it's the same exact thing, just with some different quests and maybe some tweaked gameplay mechanics. So it's tough to make it really interesting. Fascinatingly enough, the films were able to manage that and juggle that well enough, but a lot of it's because they only have to worry about 2 hours, whereas a video game you're talking 15, 20, 30 depending. So I really don't know how they would handle sequels. I don't know.
Because it would be the same place.
It would be the same place.
Yeah.
They could do some stuff. I mean, obviously the films towards the end of the series, they started to really experiment visually with different locations to really differentiate between Hogwarts and then everywhere else. And so there was a clear visual distinction. And I think you could do some stuff with the games where you would do something similar and just make them feel starkly different.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not easy to do. But I mean, you would know better than I. Have they indicated at all what the length of this game looks like or what the general scope?
No, that's a very common question. And we've seen glimpses of other locations beyond Hogwarts. We're fairly certain that Gringotts is in the game, which is the Wizarding Bank, which is set in Diagon Alley, which is, far away from Hogwarts. That's not in the same area. And then we saw in the reveal trailer, we saw what most believe is Azkaban, but we haven't seen Dementors anymore. And they've only showed they're on the box of the deluxe. So I'm thinking, I still think, I mean, they keep saying tip of the iceberg. The story around the game is centered around this idea of ancient magic. And there's some reason, we're going to find out when we play, that our character has a special connection to it. And there's this room they go in where the main character and one of the teachers, who's kind of like their guide, it almost looks like a portal. And you can very clearly see Gringotts. And I'm like, that opens up the possibility. Careful with the hype, guys, right? Careful with the hype. But that opens up I mean, you could theoretically go anywhere in the wizarding world by going through some of these portals. And like I said, we pretty clearly see Gringotts, but it's like, who knows what else they could do. So as you were talking about sequels, and that kind of got me thinking, they could do some other Wizarding World locations, kind of like in the 7th Harry Potter book and the 6th one, Harry sort of does a lot more traveling and it's not only in Hogwarts. So they might have to go that route or something.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to think about.
The options are wide open, and I always say, like, developers don't tend to be in the business of showing their hands. Like, they usually want to advertise just enough to get you to buy the game, and then everything else is a surprise for when you play it. The one exception is when people are not sold and they have to keep showing stuff to try to get you to buy it. And this is, I mean, maybe one thing you could point as like a potential worrisome point. The last game that these guys published, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, they published Gotham Knights. And Gotham Knights, I don't know if you played it, but they showed it in like the trailers. You're not missing much. They showed like literally every major boss. They showed every cool location, like all the enemy types except for I think one they showed in the trailers. So like there was no room for speculation.
No surprise.
It was all there. And then the final plot twist was
not a good one.
Oh God. But like, I don't get the vibe they're doing the same thing here because, and so I want to say like, yes, Warner Brothers was involved in that game. I don't see the same thing happening here. For one, people are buying the game already. They could show literally nothing about it and people would still buy it. Secondly, the developers who are being very vocal and doing these showcases, which is very uncommon, and for me is like, two huge thumbs up. I mean, that's
Such
great.
a cool thing.
Such a cool thing. And you can see their passion. You can see that they're not just cashing this check. You know, they're really excited to make this. And they are communicating very clearly that there's a lot more in here that they have not shared and that they're not going to share until the game comes out.
Yeah.
And to me, that gets me all the more excited because it shows they're not, you know, they're not showing everything. They're waiting and keeping some of it for the wedding night, so it's special.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's like they kept. You'll appreciate this because I know in your videos you really love to drill down to the mechanics of the moment to moment gameplay, right? And then you talk about story and stuff too. But for the longest time, we didn't know if there was a jump button in the game. And that was a big question among fans. It's like, is there? And so weird. It's like, I kept saying, I don't think there is one because why wouldn't you have already showed that? It seems like such an obvious, like you would just see it in one of these showcases or something. In one of these trailers, we would see a character. We never saw it. And then one day they just tweeted like jump. And it's just like,
period.
It's like a 3-second clip. And I almost made a YouTube short on it. And I was like, nah, I'll make a video and sort of talk about, compare games like when Elden Ring added the jump and God of War, how they used to have a jump and now the current ones don't. Just talking about how that works in games. That video blew up. I'm like, this was on a 1-word tweet. I never expected it to do that. I'm just like, people are going crazy over this. There are so many comments that like, dude, if it didn't have a jump button, I would have hated it.
I would have rioted. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, okay. There's another one right now. People are wondering about swimming. Can we swim in the game? Right. Because there's all these bodies of water outside Hogwarts. Can we dive in? Can we see the mermaids? Can we see the giant squid and all this? And I'm just waiting for them to tweet swim and show like your character swimming across. Yeah. So it's too funny though.
Yeah. No. And it's, you know, it really just showcases how passionate people are, how excited everybody is. And I want to just make sure, like wrapping all of this up, you know, these videos that we do to try and address some of the potential negatives and to do kind of talk people off the cliff, so that they're a little more grounded, you know, it all comes from a good place. And hopefully this video kind of revealed that I'm actually kind of a fanboy myself, and the video's more me trying very hard to calm myself down because I'm so excited for it. But all told, like if I had to give a gauge for what this game looks like, I mean, I'd say after following a lot of games very, very closely and seeing, you know, the rise and fall of many titles, this is sending out some very good signals, and the transparency probably chief among them. Yes, it's the first big game from this studio. Yeah, they don't have a ton of experience doing something this scale, but they're delaying last gen versions to make sure they can focus on these that they're releasing. They are getting rid of features that they don't consider essential so that they can focus on the core mechanics. And they've already delayed the game repeatedly to make sure that they can polish it to where they feel it needs to be. And all of that, you know, is a really good sign. So I'm very optimistic and I'm very excited. And I'm sure we're both going to play the ever living crap out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so many thoughts, man. This is a good conversation. So many thoughts on what you just said there. But I want to make sure I say, like, if it comes out and it's like a 4 out of 10, you know, or it's not good, I still think that would be a point of conversation further, you know, you and on my channel and whoever else covers this game of like, okay, what went wrong? Because it's such a big franchise, there will be another attempt. It may not be soon, but they're not just gonna say, okay, that's it for that franchise. Like what could they, how could we take this and actually make it into what people were dreaming of? I mean, hopefully this one will will be able to do it. It's just, man, once we get that controller in our hand, you know, and see what it feels like, how it feels to actually cast the spells, the spell casting system. I'd speculated about that for a long time, and they hadn't really showed a lot about it until these showcases. And it's an interesting system. I know you did the video on The Witcher, the update, and how they've kind of changed how the spells work, right, in that game. It seems pretty similar to that, where you like hold the trigger and then the face buttons appear, and you can have like a total of 16 spells mapped to it. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I think this was I hope I didn't hype you up too much, and then you're gonna be disappointed if it doesn't.
The game comes out, I'm like, God damn it, Retro.
Yeah. Why did I have him on? No, but I mean, I'll be disappointed too. But I have high hopes, and I'm hoping we can all enjoy a good game here in about a month.
Yeah, no, and at the end of the day, you know, we all want a game that we can love. Like, I want to like the game that is in front of me. I want to love, you know, Hogwarts Legacy. I want to love Forspoken. I want to be super into the Dead Space remake. Like, I would prefer if every game that comes out is amazing and I love it. Right? Like I don't like disliking things, but I'm going to be honest and real if there are problems. And I think you raised a good point. Yeah. You know, when this game does come out, I and you, we're going to play it and we're going to break it down. I have already committed to doing a full breakdown of the game. Guesstimations for games like this, you know, that's probably going to turn into a 4 to 5 hour video. And while that might sound like, you know,
incredible, by the way,
I appreciate that. But while it might sound like, oh, you're just trying to tear it apart and be mean. No, like all of this ends up being constructive. I know for a fact, there are developers, not just at Avalanche, but there's also developers at Ubisoft, at Rockstar. There's developers from all over the world that watch these videos, not just mine, but yours, I'm sure, and keep in touch with the community that way. And they can have a difference. They can make a difference. Your comments can make a difference because a developer might be scrolling through, see something and be like, oh, that's a really good, I hadn't thought about that. Okay, yep. Let's figure that out. It makes a difference. So this stuff isn't just being blasted into the void. It's part of a larger conversation. And while it might not have an impact today, you know, if the game comes out and it's a 4 and we do a breakdown and explain clearly why it's a 4 and what they could have done differently, the devs can take that and on their next attempt, figure it out. And then maybe we get the 10 that we're all hoping for. But if I were guessing right now, and I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would say that the odds are fairly high that this game ends up being something pretty special, and I can't wait.
Yeah,
and I thank you for joining me to talk about it, and who knows, we might circle back before the game launches, or maybe if it's horrible after the game launches and revisit this. But I really do appreciate you coming on and chatting with me, man. I do appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. Appreciate you reaching out, and like I said, your videos, the first time I saw, I was like, 8 hours. Is my YouTube messing up? Let me refresh. He's got this many views on an 8-hour video. What? I have got to watch this.
Yeah,
it's amazing, dude. Like how in depth you go.
I appreciate that, and I can only justify doing it because of the fans and the people that watch this stuff. The idea that anybody listens to me ramble for hours on end is amazing to me, but you know what, you guys keep doing it, so I'll keep rambling. So thank you all for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, make sure to like, make sure to go check out Retro, show him some love, and let me know what you think of all of this stuff in the comment section below. And if you guys have any questions, then I'm sure me or Retro will be happy to answer them either in the comment section, Twitter, or in a follow-up. So yeah, and any other stuff? Sure. Where can people find you?
I'm pretty much at Retro Tour across the board. YouTube, Twitter, those are my main two, and then do a little bit of Twitch streaming as well.
Easy peasy, easy peasy.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.